We will record again. Okay, excellent. Excellent. All right. So let's begin. It's driven by you.
Yu Kwan Sun. Who is she?
Yu Kwan Soon? Who is Yu Kwan Soon?
Yes. Oh, is she the Korean lady? The Korean queen? No?
Close, not the queen.
Joan of Arc.
Yes, thank you. Right, right. Why do we call her the Joan of Arc of Korea?
She was the young activist who kind of got like martyred.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. She gets arrested and gets executed by the government, by the Japanese government. What event is she connected to?
1st of March.
Yeah, March 1st student movement. Right. And then going back to what Drew and I were talking about before class, why is she then important, right? What's kind of significant about her being part of the March 1st movement?
She's a woman.
Yeah, right. And what kind of, right, so women typically weren't taking part in Korean politics beforehand. You had some exceptions like queen men, but she was a queen. That's why she got to take part in politics. Right, and anything else about her being a woman? What kind of, okay, so she's a woman, right? That's one thing. What else about her?
Christian.
She's a Christian. And why is that important?
Churches were being used as networks to organize.
Exactly, right. To take effective social action, oftentimes you need not only an idea, you also need a organization, you need a network. Right? And what was her position in the network? What was she doing?
She was an educator. Was she the kid that went to school and like proclaimed what she learned so that people didn't have access to education?
Exactly. That was one part. There were two things she did. That's one of them, right? She would go to school, right? And this was sponsored by a missionary, right? This missionary helped her get money to go to school, and then also helped her just get the connection she needed, right? She needed letters of reference and that sort of thing. She helped her get that so she'd go to school. She would take that knowledge back into the countryside where she was from. And this is also important because not only were women not typically active in politics, but country people weren't, right? Rural people were not, right? And then also, what was her role? So that's good. That's one of the things that she's connected to the network. The other thing, what was her role during the March 1st movement?
She was arrested and beaten to death.
She was arrested and beaten to death, and why was she arrested? What was she doing? And don't say participate in the March 1st movement. How was she doing it?
She was part of the demonstration.
Okay, that's a part of it. And what else is she doing? How is she supporting the people who are actually declaring independence? What's her role in the network with the independence people? She's the one that is helping to hand out flags and that's copies of the Declaration of Independence, right? That's what they use the students for. So just to note, right, on the review sheet, I talk about what you need, what makes a good identification question. What it was, or who it was, and we've identified that. A Korean lady. Remember also, it's important that she's young, right? She's like, it depends on how you count her age. She's 18 or 19, and she's taking part in these. So this is another thing that makes her different, right? Young people like this, young Korean women from the countryside did not take part in the politics, right, because of this, or before this time typically. That's one thing that's changing. The rise of nationalism connected to Protestant Christianity, which gives you the ideas and the organization in order to take it out, right? And what was the connection? How does Protestant Christianity go with nationalism, right? How does that work? Are we talking about that here? What happens when you get saved? If you're ever exposed to evangelical Christians, like what does that do to your life? Have you ever seen someone that's an evangelical Christian, they'll get up and they'll tell you all the terrible things they did before they got saved? What do they do after they get saved?
Nice and good things.
Exactly. It's the same thing. All these terrible sins that we Koreans commit by adopting Protestant Christianity, reforming and repenting, God will help us to be good moral people, and that will make us a powerful nation, which will be able to keep its independence. Right? Right. So we have what it was, right? Had a lot of what it was. Or who she was and what she did. When it was we got right, it's the 1919, but especially the colonial period, the early colonial period. And it's important in a large part because, why is it important? I'm trying to think how to put this. Right, this shows how Korean nationalism is being created by Japanese colonialism in part two, right? It's an anti-Japanese demonstration. They're working for freedom from the Japanese colonial state. And the last part, what is the overall significance for later Japanese history, right? How does Korea fit into Japan after 1945, or after the colonial period? What is that, what Yu Kwan-soon went through, remind Koreans about Japan today?
Can I think of them as evil imperialists?
Yeah, right, exactly. And how does this cause problems for Japan's foreign policy? Right, it's hard to get the people to accept what Japan wants to do, right? You want a seat on the Security Council? Sorry, you guys killed Yu Kwan-soon. Right, you haven't come to terms with it. Right, so that makes it, so getting the first few right, who it is, when it happens, why is it important then and there, that's a B-level answer. Connecting that to the larger course, taking it further into history, that's where you get to your A range. Right, so that's when knowing, okay, how does she help us think about the Korean experience and how that connects to Japan today? And that's one way you can kind of think of this A levels. What does this have to do with Japan today? Okay. Right? Are there any questions? Any more questions on Miss You? Or shall we go to someone else? Thank you. I told that joke before, and no one got it. In another class, I talk about Yu Kwan-soon a bit. She's awesome. As an aside, I don't know if I pointed this out, An Chung-gun is also sometimes referred to as the Korean Joan of Arc.
Really?
The French have a warrior saint, can't the Koreans? He should be canonized. That's what some Koreans argue today. He should be a saint. Kind of interesting. Saint Anne of the Gun.
Pretty sure Joan of Arc was mainly canonized because they felt bad about burning her, so.
It was the English that burned her.
Yeah, damn English.
It was still the Christians who put them.
Right. No, this is true, yeah.
I was wondering if you could go look at murder by assassination.
Okay.
I'm just wondering what you're looking for. Like, I know there's a period of time where it's
Sure.
just like anybody that was in power was like assassinated. But I was just wondering like how far in depth one has to go.
Sure. Okay, so what you were saying then, right? So there's a time period where people are being bumped off, right? They're being killed. Who's the ones doing the killing? Ultranationalists. And what kind of people are they? What do they usually do for a living?
The army.
Yeah, they're usually soldiers. Some of the first ones were civilians, but once we get into this period in the late 20s, early mid-30s, they're soldiers mostly. Who do they target?
Political leaders.
Right, political leaders. Anyone else? Prime ministers. Anybody else?
Army officials.
Right, army officials. We talked about one general who was killed by a man named Aizawa. I believe. Let's see. That is one of your readings. Remember, that's from the PowerPoint, not from Huffman. I gave his quote, right, Aizawa, where he's talking about why did you kill General Nagata. It's that whole thing about democracy is all wrong, right? And so what's the effect? Oh, and did they only kill Japanese people? Mary, you're shaking your head.
Did they also kill some Korean people?
Right.
I think
Close, Chinese. Chinese, they assassinated some Chinese people. Korea was already under Japanese control by this time, there wasn't a need, but that's good, that's good. Close. And how successful were they? Did government by assassination, what did it lead to? Exactly, right. The militarists do come to power. You keep bumping off these guys, you keep bumping them off, and eventually it's decided, this is too much conflict for society, we can't continue to do this, let's stop. Right, we're going to give in to them, right? And why is it successful? Why do people believe in these guys?
People for the emperor to be the main, political leader, not the prime ministers. They want to kind of get rid of.
Right. So the prime minister, why don't they like the prime ministers? What's wrong? I mean, they're the prime ministers, right? They got elected.
The middleman again, the shogun, like the shogun.
Yeah, exactly. You have these people getting in between us and the emperor, right? The shogun, he got between us and the emperor, so we got rid of him. These guys, these corrupt politicians, these corrupt businessmen, they also killed businessmen. These guys get between us and the emperor. So let's get rid of them and let the emperor rule us directly, right? And going back a little bit, why is Japan, I mean, they were a democracy before this, right? Well, why not just stick with democracy? What was going wrong with democracy in the 20s and the early 30s?
Was that when they had like economic trouble and they kind of blamed it on democracy?
Yeah, that was a big one. Right, there's economic problems, it's part of this democracy's fault. Part of it is the fact that the liberal democracies like the United States and Great Britain won't trade with us fairly anymore. They're hemming us in. Let's go a different way. Let's build our own self-sufficient empire. Right? Now, one important thing that I'm looking for in the test, in the finals, is the ability to connect later, more modern events to earlier events, right? So who's the guy in 1970 who tries to kind of bring this back?
He's the one who almost marries me.
Yeah. What's one of the, yeah, Yukio Mishima, right. Think about Yu-Gi-Oh, right, that card game? I'm serious, think about it.
Yeah.
That's the way to think of it. Yu-Gi-Oh. It's only one, I will embarrass myself, I'm trying to write it. It's only one slight difference in the hiragana, right? Just add the two little dots, and Yu-Gi-Oh becomes Yu-Gi-Oh. So that's close enough, right? So what's Yukio Mishima trying to do? In 1970, yeah, Mary.
Provide military activism?
Exactly. How's he trying to do it?
He makes this speech.
Right, he makes a speech.
For the humanity, employ more to their humanity,
Right.
what they're doing to the country versus
Mm-hmm.
continuing to do what they're doing to the country.
Right, exactly. So he's trying to make a change, go back to those kind of old ideas. And what happens to him? How do people react to the speech, I should say?
They reject him.
Yeah, they laugh at him, and what's he do? He kills himself, right. So they laugh at him, right? Well, wait a second. Aizawa gives almost the same speech. If you compare what they're saying, the kind of ideas they're drawing on, Aizawa and Yukio are giving the same speech, or the same idea. Why do people listen to Aizawa when people like him in the 1930s, but they don't listen to Yukio in the 1970s? What changed? Drew?
1970, they already gone down the whole route that he's talking about, and they ended up worse for wear.
Exactly. World War II happened. Exactly. Thank you. So that's right. It doesn't work. We tried that road once. It failed. Actually, it's okay to hit me. I should probably. Is it all right if I put this here? So my voice will actually hit it instead of it being behind me. Right, exactly. So this is, this is like, one thing I'm going to be looking for in the test is your ability to make this kind of connection, to comparing old events, to think historically, to think in a flow of time, right? This experience changed things. Aizawa, one reason people listened to Aizawa and the other soldiers was that they were being seen as sincere. Those bad politicians were seen as being corrupt, right? These guys are sincere. People didn't really doubt Yukio's sincerity. But they still didn't listen to him because of that whole World War II thing, and it didn't work out so well. So, okay, so that, good question.
Anxiety over youth?
Anxiety over youth. That's on there?
Yeah, I just don't even know what that's talking about.
Like monster children.
Yeah, I,
Or is that talking about like a new woman?
can you show me where that is? Because I thought, did I look at the wrong? Here. Oh, good, it's there. Did I? I'm gonna make sure I got it right.
Oh, it's talking about that? Okay. I just had no idea what that was talking about at all.
Where is it?
And then also the classrooms collapsed in 2006. And
Can I,
seven,
can I see a sheet for one moment, please? And can I see someone who just gave a new sheet? I just gave a new sheet to?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure what the heck's going on here. No. Okay. Well, in my effort to help people, I accidentally cut off 3 of the concepts that should have been there. So if you got the new sheet, it starts at D. I'm sorry, please add abortion before birth control, pills, in parentheses, American occupation, when you do a review sheet, you have to go through several drafts. So anxiety over review. Okay, yeah, that appears to be the only difference between the two. Oh. No, I'm sorry, there is also one other difference. If you have the new one I handed out under IDs, it has Yoshida Hiru. That should be deleted. My apologies. Okay, who's that? I took Drew's and I took Bronca's. Yeah, and Mandy, sorry.
Yeah, you guys had the new one that you emailed to us, that you said you did from here from the last class.
The new ones?
Yeah, the new.
Oh.
sort of-
Sure, I just put that up. I'm gonna have to, when I get back to the office, I will put up a master one that is completely correct. Here's the problem, I want to get it to everyone early, and this is kind of what happens. Fortunately, everyone's basically here, so we can deal with that fairly easily. Okay, what? Okay, the ones, if you don't have these, please add them. PM Koizumi and the restoration of Japanese confidence. And the other one is remembering World War II. There we go. Yeah, thank you, Maddie. Oh, no, this is mine. Sorry. Okay, so back to anxiety over youth. So what is Japanese anxiety over youth?
They don't have a seek for meaning.
Right, that's a part of it. Right, our children don't have are looking for meaning, and they're not finding it among normal activities, among the activities we went through, right? And if you're the generation that has, that's concerned about that, what was your kind of basic thing you were focused on in your life? If you were coming of age in the 60s and 70s, and even into the 50s, what's your main focus then? Or the main focus of Japan, economically speaking?
School.
School, right? And why do you go to school?
Education, if you get a job, more money, the
Right.
economy better, the nation better.
Right, exactly. And a lot of this has come from the income doubling plan, right?
Yeah.
Your goal is to make money. But then the problem is, okay, once you make money, what do you do? right? What's the point? You can only own the 3 treasures, you know, you can only own one, you know, there's only so many TVs you can watch at one time. I think my dad's up to about 8. He has a wall of TVs, it's really cool. You know, there's only so many washing machines you need, right? So you need to find meaning. So there's anxiety, what's going to happen to our children, right? Because they're looking for meaning, and they're looking to places like Om Shinrikyo, right? This religion that releases sarin gas on the subway. They're looking, you know, I think Mary or someone was getting examples, right? You have these children who are killing other children, which is always very disturbing. Right, and and also, why are people, just in any culture, universally speaking, why are people concerned about the youth?
People are always concerned about the youth.
Well, I know you're not trying, but you're being difficult, Drew. So, yeah, Anna.
Because they're the ones that are gonna replace that population.
Yeah.
They're the future.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So that's a concern with anyone. We see that concern in Japan as well. And Japan is not a place that has like a super high rate of juvenile crime or anything like that, but people still have this kind of anxiety over it. Right? Now, oh, and I should also point out that's why you also have people joining things like the United Red Army and joining, and you know, Yukio Mishima and his society, right? It's because you have people looking for meaning. However, those movements are never that big, and they ultimately fail, which shows the kind of how the income doubling plan and consumerism actually kind of works fairly well, in fact.
Ishiwara Kanji?
Just going down the IDs.
I think I'm going up the IDs.
You're going,
yes.
oh, you're going up the IDs. Yukio Mishima. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Ishiwara Kanji. So who is Ishiwara Kanji? Mary.
Buddhist nationalist?
Exactly, yeah, nice. Buddhist nationalist. Right? And around when is he operating?
Race war?
Right, he predicted the coming race war. Interesting guy. He thinks that there's going to be a race war between white people and yellow people. So, and he's one of these people who in 1931 helps orchestrate the Japanese seizure of Manchuria.
He also assassinates the Chinese warlord.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I take notes.
Right. So he, so these are kind of the basic, that's again, what he's basically doing, when he's doing it, right? And why is this significant? All right. What happens after Japan gets Manchuria? Or, well, Japan takes Manchuria, what does this lead to?
Isn't it their style of World War II? Or World War I?
Essentially, it's getting there. What happens, they take Manchuria in 1931, and then they keep then they say, well, we need more, we need part of China if we want to protect Manchuria, and we need Manchuria to protect Korea, we need Korea to protect Japan, so we need to keep expanding into China. And then they keep expanding, and then 1937, the Chinese finally say enough, and that's when World War II in the Pacific begins, 1937. Right, so this is in many ways how Japan gets more and more engrossed into the Asian mainland, and this then leads to the invasion of China, which then leads to, so Japan's at war with China, it doesn't stop there, what happens next? Right, well, right, there's a little brief war with Russia in 1939, and the Japanese get beaten terribly badly because they don't have tanks. For our military history lovers, they fought Marshal Zhukov, which is never a good idea. Zhukov is tough.
So where the Navy went and tried to take over all the islands?
Right. The Navy tried to take over all the islands in 1941 in reaction to the American attempt to stop Japanese expansion by cutting off oil and iron. Right, that ends up happening in 1941, and this leads then to war with the United States, with the ABCD powers, right? America, Britain, China, and the Dutch. Right, this is what's key, is these actions puts Japan on the collision course with World War II, which leads to the occupation of Japan which was the whole point of having an empire to start with, was not to get occupied, which is what happens. Right? So that's what I mean about, that's the significance, right, beyond the time. Right? The significance, this just shows Japanese expansion. Why is Japanese, and why we can do that? Okay, this shows the, again, the B answer is when you get up to not just say, you know, this shows Japan getting into, this significance shows Japanese expansion. Okay, that's the B answer. Then you ask yourself, well, why is this important? How does this affect the rest of history? And that's when you go on and say, well, this leads to World War II and the occupation. Right? And then you can even go further if you want to say, this is why China and Japan don't get along too well anymore. Right, so that's what I'm kind of looking for, is I want to see that you understand this kind of flow of the narrative and how historical events that happened, you know, 70, 80, 100 years ago still influence us today. Right? This is always a problem these days that historians are always trying to argue, is people want us to only look at things very recently. It's like, no, all those recent things go back very far. That's what you are. Just as a side, interesting guy, because most of the people who were ultra-nationalists then were not Buddhist ultra-nationalists, they were Shinto ultra-nationalists. Which is probably one reason he was actually nicer to Chinese people than most. He actually wanted to be equal after he took Manchuria.
For the Battle of Nanjing, are you asking about the battle itself, or the Rape of Nanjing, or are they the same thing?
Both. Yeah, I'm including that as the same thing. I was using battle to be a little more neutral and also to get in the idea that the connection to the military aspect. So, okay, so what is the Battle of Nanjing? What's that? What year is it? Or around what year? Yeah, 1930. Excuse me. 1937. I get choked up with it. No. I should, actually. It's very sad. But in 1937, right? There was a battle that precedes it, right? You had the Battle of Shanghai, which is very difficult. And the Japanese aren't happy because the Chinese are put up this very stiff fight. So you have a bunch of angry, tired, hungry Japanese soldiers are then made to forced march from Shanghai to Nanjing, which is very far away. And the Chinese army initially says, well, we're going to hold the city. Then they decide at the last moment, no, we're going to leave. And this leads to a lot of chaos. And there's no one there to formally surrender the city. And the Japanese soldiers go in and kind of go nuts. And yeah, for several weeks, basically go around looting, pillaging, raping, and killing. Right? And that's the basic kind of what it is and when it is. So why is this important? I mean, it's sad. I mean, you can certainly just, it's like, okay, this is depressing, right? Oh, this is the history we study is depressing, but why? Why is it important?
I was just going to say it's another reason why China did not like Japan.
Yeah, the reason why China's not, there's a lot of those, right? Excellent, excellent. No, another reason, and that's important, right? Connects back to kind of diplomatic issues, to this desire for Japan to be a normal country.
But why should they be on the Peace Council if they're going to just...
Right. You can't be on the UN Security Council if you let that happen. You don't see to it. But at the same time, also sometimes, like it argues, it's overplayed. But right, remember we talked about how Japan has this problem where they're still in the post-war period. We don't talk about America being in the post-war period, referring to World War II, because it just hasn't kind of come to grips. What else? So that's good connected to something really modern. What about something that's there at the time, right? What does this mean about what the war in Asia is going to be like?
It makes Japan look very bad on an international stage.
Right.
Also, I'm pretty sure the U.S. starts supporting China very shortly after that.
Yeah, exactly, right. This is going to hurt Japan internationally, and it shows Japan's willingness, I mean, just like what Drew was saying, and just to build on that, Japan then is going to turn away, right? It already withdrew from the League of Nations in 1931. It's going to increasingly say, who cares about what the West thinks? We're just going to do what we want, which of course is going to mean, who cares about the Geneva Convention or how we treat prisoners of war, and that kind of thing. Yeah, Drew?
One question that's, I suppose, a sort of side topic is, was the League of Nations actually important? Because I've gotten the impression from pretty much any other class that involves it that the League of Nations was basically useless.
I don't know enough about the League to say. I mean, they were attempting to work through it. I mean, it was a way of expressing opinions. I mean, Japan did bother to send people there. I mean, it wasn't a terribly powerful organization. I mean, it didn't, for example, it didn't have the United States in it. It was missing some very important players. But I think people sometimes use the League as a kind of just make fun of it. I'm not sure if it's quite fair. I mean, I don't know what they were supposed to do.
They didn't enforce anything, and the U.S. created it and then didn't do it.
Right, right. No,
It's
that
kind
that
of
is
a joke.
It is kind of funny, but that's more a joke on Wilson though than the league itself. Wilson, he wouldn't bring any Republicans with him when he went to Europe. I think if I remember right.
He just didn't think things through. Let's all form this without talking to Congress at all.
Yeah.
They won't mind.
And going back a bit, but no, that's excellent. So, right, it's getting people on. This turns again international opinion against Japan, which will also help lead to World War II. What is also going on with what does this say about the kind of war that's going to be fought in the Pacific?
An aggressive, bloody war.
Right, it's going to be very brutal. Right, exactly. There's going to be a lot of atrocities. And this is going to continue when the Americans get involved, in which case it's going to become, it was already kind of a racial war anyway between Chinese and Japanese, becomes even more so. Right? And typically, just to kind of build on, or let me go back for a second. Right, so this is going to be a dirty, nasty war that is not going to win friends. How does this work with the whole Asia for the Asians thing?
Nobody wants to be in Japan's side.
Yeah, this is the problem. It's hard to say you're liberating China when you're, or liberating any of the other countries when you're going around doing this. Right? This is highly problematic. So there was one other thing I wanted to say about that. I've been writing the final, and I'm trying to think if there's anything I can say to Bill on that. Oh, yeah, just as an aside, so what, typically from how would Japanese be portrayed then by Americans because of instances like this?
Oh,
Right, aggressive?
isn't that like the dehumanizing factor with them as the enemy? Once the U.S. joined the war, they could say they're like really evil and
Right.
people didn't feel bad about killing them.
Right, exactly. And what kind of images were used to dehumanize them? Remember from any of the pictures I showed?
The bug,
Right?
lice,
Lice, yeah.
Japanese black ones, or whatever.
Right, yeah. Lice, right? And we're going to clear them out just like we would any kind of lice. And who was kind of pictured? Who was the louse? Like when they showed the louse, was this just a particular Japanese person? Was this Japanese people as a whole? Right? How does the lice appear? Sorry, I asked
Black
like 10
with buck
questions.
teeth.
I'm sorry?
It is black and I have buck teeth with a gap.
Right, yeah. And these really angrily slanted almond-shaped eyes, right? Exactly. So it's really making the Japanese race the enemy, which is different, right, from how Nazi Germany is treated. In Germany, Americans typically understood that there were good Germans and then there were Nazis. But in the Pacific, there were just Japs. And a good Jap was a dead Jap. Which always, by the way, makes it complicated to abbreviate stuff when you're studying Japan.
Yeah.
So the abbreviation I taught was JESE, J-E-S-E.
I just put J.
Just put J, okay.
Because
Some,
I know that it's not.
some people add an N, J-A-P-N. Well, it only saves you like one letter. So. I'm sorry, no, they do J-P-N. I just write JESE.
JP and not worry about how that would actually be pronounced.
Right.
I just pretend it doesn't happen.
This lack of vowel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
What about changing Nai?
I'm sorry?
A full of love?
Oh, yeah. Naomi. Yeah. So what was that about? Oh, it's under the readings. Naomi.
Sure about that?
She didn't know I.
I don't have it either.
You sure?
No.
This might be the other
I don't have it.
one.
Oh, it's the
I
old one.
don't think so.
It's the second reading.
It's on the other side. Oh, on
The
the
second
other
reading
side.
for us is declaration of war.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Please strike that out.
Which one, the?
Chijin no Ai.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm really okay. This is from the new one I just handed out. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry. The new one I just handed out. Apparently, I got the wrong draft. I accidentally picked up a rough draft. Who did I just take this from? I'm sorry, Natasha. That just occurred to me. I think the final draft. What happens also, I have two different. I share an office with another professor So what that means is I have to constantly move my stuff around
Oh.
between my home and here, and I don't always get to use that. And so what happened was, when I just upload and print out, I print out a slightly older version. So the one that you have in your hands, the one that I handed out previously, is correct. That's the one I used when I made the test. So obviously, Naomi's not on the test, which is great and just needs to be checked. Mary.
What do you mean by transformation and suffrage?
Right. Okay. First of all, just real quick, what is suffrage?
Right, just vote.
Vote.
Right. Just the right to vote.
Oh.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. No, because we always talk about women's suffrage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So who? First of all, who gets to vote when the Meiji period starts?
Anyone who can afford it.
Well, any who can who
Rich
afford.
noble?
Men.
Right. Right. Any man who can pays a certain amount of taxes. And the way at first that they expand this is just by lowering the amount of taxes you have to pay. Right. What happens in 1925?
Everyone can vote as long as you don't talk bad about the government.
Everyone?
All men.
All men. All men. 1925. There's a few other things that you have to do, right? You can't be homeless. You can't be on public or private assistance, which would pretty much destroy all the graduate students. They couldn't vote. If private assistance means your parents, right? And so, okay, so that's men. So how do women get the right to vote? Right? Women vote in Japan. Where does it come? Where does their right to vote come from?
The war?
Right, the war. So they during the war?
After.
After the war. What happens after the war?
They get the Constitution, the new Constitution.
Right. Who makes the Constitution?
United States.
United States, right. Americans make the Constitution, and that Constitution includes the right for women to vote, and then women get the right to vote. So it's actually from a foreign power, right, is how women get the right to vote. So you have a constantly expanding suffrage, but it only ever gets to expand to men until the war, and then it only gets to be women when America brings it in. And that's, do Japanese people keep that after the Americans leave, or do they get rid of it? They keep it, right. Right. Some of the SCAP reforms, like the women's right to vote, get kept. Right. They stay even after the Americans leave. Can you think of any that didn't keep? Mary?
Decentralization of education and police, I think.
Excellent. Yeah, you gave me two.
Okay.
Good deal. Yeah, decentralization, right? The Americans said you need to decentralize. You know how in the United States, right, you have a sheriff's department, you have metropolitan police, you have state police, and you have the FBI, right? You have all these layers. In Japan, traditionally, you only had one. Americans didn't like that, so we said, you need to be like us, decentralize your police. We have local school boards with elected members. We said, you have to do that too. They did it for a while. They did both those things for a while. And then either while we were still there, or shortly after we left, they got rid of them. Anything else you can think of that they got rid of? Right, yeah, that's a big one. We tried to get rid of the Zaibatsu, and they kept them. And why was that a good thing for Japan?
As far as industry goes and the
Yeah.
economy, keeping it together, and they had more companies at the end of everything because they had like competition between them and have monopolies in certain
They help industry out.
Yeah.
they helped each other survive. And
Right,
didn't
right.
become
Yeah, exactly.
one
You had
giant company.
a partnership, right, between business and the government.
Oh, and they could buy technology as a group and
Right.
share it.
Mhm.
rather than just
Yeah, exactly. And so that cooperation helps Japan bounce back very quickly. So it's a good thing from their perspective that they got rid of that. Right, and that was MITI, right? What was it, the Ministry of, something technology and industry. I always forget what the other I is. It won't be on the test. What the other I is won't be on the test. The concept will be.
How about reverse course?
Right? Just to remind me, where's this? Okay, it's on the concept. Smart. So, what is the reverse course? It's kind of related to what I was just talking about.
Reverse course?
Yeah, no one remembers the reverse course.
Wait, wasn't that what we were just
I don't even see
I
that.
don't have it either.
Yeah, that's just what we were talking about. Okay, someone, what, is this another one that was?
Yeah.
Okay, who asked it? Who asked the reverse course? So this was on the form. Sorry, so this is on the rough draft, so please go ahead and cross that out. But yeah, Emily's right, that's what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Catherine, I'm sorry, I know who you are, I really do. Emily Holland, Catherine Stein, Maddie Case? Should I go around the whole window? No, this is a big thing I'm strict on, like, I know my students' names. I'm sorry. No, I can get 100% on that test.
If any of you have ever taken a class with Professor Johnston, though, you know just how terrifying names
my
are
God.
with her.
First day, you go around and say your name once, and she can go around and say it in a class of like 27 people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's
terrifying.
mind-boggling.
Just as an aside, the great Catholic missionary to China, Matteo Ricci, what he would do, he would have everyone in this room write a poem. He would have you all give him the poem. He would read the poem several times, go through them. He would go around the room and recite back to you each poem. Then he would go back and recite to you each poem backwards. There's different techniques, memory techniques. There's different ways you can train your mind to do these things, and Professor Johnson has probably done that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Because that is amazing. I need to learn. I need to talk to her. Because I'm terrible at things. But, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. So sorry. That was Emily. I stirred you wrong. Gave you the wrong sheet. Evelyn, I gave you the wrong sheet. It's been, I spent a lot of today at the doctor, so for my son, but he was okay. It was just vaccinations. But I spent a lot of time dancing with a very angry 6-month-old. They don't like vaccines.
They do not.
Yeah, Mary.
Is the rise and fall of imperial democracy tied to Ishiwara Kanji?
Yes, in some ways. Right, that's a good point, right? You can also draw Ishiwara Kanji into that whole government by assassination, the rise and fall of imperial democracy, right? Because you have a democracy, and he's one of these people who's working against it, right? You have these military men who are taking action without civilian approval, right? And the civilian government isn't powerful enough to rein them in, right? And just as a review, what does imperial democracy refer to? It's very simple in terms of the title.
Refers to a democracy that has an empire.
Yeah, in which you have, at the same time, I mean, it's a very nice way to refer to things. It's very clear. Imperial democracy refers to the fact that Japan, from 1905 to 1932, was a functioning democracy that happily and popularly embraced imperialism. Right? There was no, we see sometimes a contradiction between that or a paradox, no problem here between the two. Probably because they had the concept that only some people had the right to vote. Or that had anything to do with it.
Prime Minister Koizumi is Ultraman, right? That's that guy?
He is the powerful prime minister who was buddies with Ultraman, right, between 2001 and 2006.
Okay, so that is that guy.
What is the, what's that under?
I mean, you wrote it on the board to have us add.
Oh, PM Koizumi, okay, so it's under concepts. I'm sorry, yeah, those two are under concepts. Right, so why is Koizumi restoring confidence? He's prime minister from 2001 to 2006. What happened in the 1990s? What do we call that? The lost decade, right? 1990s is the lost decade. Remember I showed you that review on that video on the real estate. Real estate, thank you. Sorry, I'm really on the real estate market in Japan, right? So you had this in the 80s, 70s and 80s, you had this booming economy. Late 80s, early 90s, you had the bubble burst, right? The real estate bubble burst, everything goes really bad. And Prime Minister Koizumi is trying to, is oftentimes credited as helping to reverse that, right? By trying to restore restoring Japanese confidence. That's part of my argument, is that sometimes it's not the policies of the leader, just it's their ability to inspire confidence, right? I mean, the guy can stand next to Ultraman and still look pretty cool. I couldn't get the picture, but he's a handsome guy. He's a charismatic guy, right? And what are some of the things he tried to do to restore confidence?
Didn't he like argue openly with his own party, like in support of the people? And, like,
Yeah.
Kind of gave them the idea that he wasn't corrupt. He was actually on their side.
Yeah, exactly. Mary?
He also did things differently. He had 5 women in his cabinet.
Right. Excellent. Well, excellent answer. just to add one more, what did he do about Yasukuni Shrine?
He went there.
He went there.
Here.
Right,
I was trying to think of the name of the shrine.
right. He goes to Yasukuni Shrine every year, right? Pays respect to the war dead. And why does this say that Japan is confident?
Because
Isn't he afraid of the public opinion?
Yeah, he's like, I don't care what people think about the me going here. Our men are died bravely in battle. Why should we necessarily accept that we were completely at fault for World War II? Shouldn't they be honored too? And who are these foreigners to tell us what to do?
haters gonna hate.
It does indeed come naturally for you, Drew. Right.
You're not running speechless.
Right, exactly. So, right, so Yasukuni is a problem for, so this is why it's one reason it's restoring. Say, we're a normal country, we're going to do what we think is right, we're going to honor our history, we're going to honor our brave patriots, and so forth. Now, why do people on the Japanese, and that's the perspective of the right? Why do people on the Japanese left kind of oppose this? What do they think the problem is? Mary? You're really prepared.
They don't get along well with other countries because of it, and
Right.
because there's military criminals in there,
Mhm.
along with the innocents.
Right. People, right. You have criminals who are being respected there, right? And right, this is going to get us a lot of criticism from the outside, right? We should be international in our thinking, right? Nationalism versus internationalism. And also, and just as an idea of kind of, what can I say, self-survival, what happened to the Japanese left during World War II? You know the answer. Who did you present on?
Oh, they all got put in prison.
Yeah, they got president and beaten up. Right? So if you're on the Japanese left, if you're a communist, or you're a member of a new religion, right, that were historically suppressed during World War II, you're going to oppose this. Out of a fear that this embrace of the Yasukuni kind of narrative, this idea that, hey, we're not completely at fault of World War II, these guys are actually heroes, that will lead to a resurgence in nationalism that will lead to you suffering. Right? So that's kind of the left, why the left doesn't like Yasukuni, but why the right does, right? Because it helps give you confidence. Japanese are a normal country. And that also leads to, so if you're on the right wing, remember I told you there were two myths, right, about kind of how Japanese remember World War II. That's one that we added. Mary, you want to tell me one of the myths?
The left people were tricked, manipulated into war, and therefore are innocent.
Right. Yeah, the common people were tricked, manipulated, or they're innocent. It was only those darn rightist militarists that they had complete control. Imperial democracy kind of is a problem for them. They kind of ignore that. Right? So that's why I say it's a myth. What's the right-wing myth? Yeah, Mary, excellent.
The war was fought against Western imperialism for Japanese independence and liberation of Asia.
Exactly. That's their story. Excellent. I don't know if you need to take the test. I just give you,
What was the left wing?
People were tricked and manipulated into the war and are innocent.
Oddly enough, it's the German defense also.
Right? It's always, yeah. We were just following orders.
Yeah.
Pretty sure the Americans have had that defense won at least a couple of times. Italians, definitely. I'm trying to think of a country that hasn't used that. We'll get back to you on that. Yeah?
I have a question about transformation of generals in the post-war period.
Okay.
What exactly is that referring to?
Sure.
Is it referring to like people women getting education and going into the job market to get husbands, or is that referring to voting? Like, what is that?
Right. Sure. No. Excellent. What am I referring to here? Okay. 1959. Michiko boom. What am I talking about?
Oh, okay. Is that the Empress, the commoner that everyone was like really excited about? And
Right.
then followed her story, and she's in a tabloid, I guess, kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly. People were going. Japan did not have network TV before her time,
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, now we had to have national TV so we can share images of her on her wedding march throughout the country, right? And people were going out and buying TVs that never had TVs before. And I pointed out in class, there was one reason. What was it? Especially women were really interested in this, right? And why would women be interested in this in terms of gender roles? What's the ideal for women at this time?
Oh, wasn't it like she gave up a career to marry the emperor or something? Or is that something else?
You're thinking a few decades later.
Okay,
You're on the right
the other
track.
one. Okay.
So it can happen to everybody. So like
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they basically were thinking. It
Right,
can
right.
happen to anybody.
And what can happen to anyone?
That kind of like fairy tale-ish thing.
Right. And so what's your goal as a woman, primarily?
Get married.
To get married. To get married to your Prince Charming, right? Men are going to university to get a job at a big company. Women are going to junior college to get a job as a flower, right, as an office lady, an OL, in order to marry that guy. Right, so that's kind of the ideal here that's being shown in 1959. I'm confusing it. I went to go get coffee and we were out of coffee. I usually have coffee before we But in 1993, I believe it's Crown Prince Akihito gets married.
Okay.
You
That
imagine
was
what's
the career woman. Who
Right.
Was kind of, wasn't she kind of criticized for giving up her career and marrying?
Some people did, right?
Yeah.
First of all, the boom was, there was no, I don't even know her name because she's not considered that important for this, but there's no Akihito wife's boom, right? There's no, people just are not into it in 1993 like they're in 1959. And part of it seems to be stemmed to that. That's not your goal. And that she's somewhat criticized people. She was working for, I believe, the foreign ministry. She had a good government job that she probably could have advanced in, but instead she just chose to marry into the royal family. And so this shows kind of changing gender roles. So what does this tell us about how gender roles change then? How does the ideal for women change? What's the shift?
You don't have to be just a mother or like a wife anymore. You can partake in a job.
Right. The ideal is not just simply getting married. The idea includes work. And you can even say it's a little ambiguous, right? Because it's, okay, you work for how long and so forth. But the key thing is you have a shift, right? It's not just straight out, let's go get married to Prince Charming. We're going to have a debate about that, right? Mary.
I saw that she has Yoshida Shigeru crossed off of hers, and then do you cross it off up there? Too?
Yeah, I crossed it off
Okay.
up there. I'm sorry. I wrote it up there and then crossed it out to show that it should be
Okay.
deleted. Poor Yoshida, he's cool, but I had to leave him out. Had too much occupation stuff.
When you say recovering from lost decade, is that pretty much just related to the Prime Minister Koizumi?
A lot of it, right, just to be sure, just to make sure, when is the lost decade?
1990s.
90s. Right. So it's preceded, things were going well in the 1980s, then you have the lost decade in the 1990s, right, and it's pulled out. So, and pretty much, we call it the lost decade because the 50s, later 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it's just economic boom, like for 4 decades.
Yeah.
And then you have this decade where like nothing happens.
What about Edgar Smolders?
Oh yes.
Is that not supposed to be?
Where did I put?
No,
It's
that's
under-
actually
It's there.
names.
I just thought it was Smothers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
How did
Sorry,
I? Oh no, that's okay. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Is this mine? Did I put this down here?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I lost my sheet. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, Edgar Smothers, okay. So that's a reading for the PowerPoint, not from Huffman. Remember what I told you about if you see the SJ behind someone's name?
Is that shoe?
Yeah, right, don't argue with them, you'll probably lose. Jesuits are smart guys, typically. But he is a Jesuit, right? Do you remember what event was he connected to?
Nuclear bombs.
Right,
He
right.
didn't like the fact that, he didn't agree with them because he said that if it was justified to use in that war, you could use it at any other point when you felt like it.
Exactly. So, and I gave you a quote from the PowerPoint on the atomic bomb on him. So just make sure you understand. So that's who he is, and Natasha explained that. Make sure you understand his argument. It's a very, I just think it's important to kind of understand different people's points of view, and he does a very good job. I mean, it's like one paragraph. It's a very good argument.
Wasn't the other half of the argument, if it wasn't moral, then what the hell, guys?
Yeah, that was basically the other half, right? Was either so I mean, Jesuits are smart guys. He took a very complex situation and he said, well, either you drop the bomb and then other people can use it against you, or you don't drop the bomb and other people, and then other people can use it against. Or I'm sorry, either it's wrong, it's okay to use it. You're wrong to use it, or it was used against you. See, this is why I'm not a Jesuit. Okay, I'm sorry. Either you were wrong to use it, in which case, why did you use it? Or it was right for you to use it, that means other people can use it against you. Just to be fair, though, what's the counter argument? What was the argument that Harry Truman or the Americans dropping the bomb would have given?
They saved lives by using it.
That's what they would argue, right. Right, we save lives in the long run. Whether that is true or not is a historical case that we will deal with in this class, which is an interesting historical question.
Another interesting historical fact, they briefly considered just dropping it over the ocean to scare the pants off the Japanese.
Right.
But they worried it wasn't going to go off. So they just dropped it on a city instead.
Yeah. Right. Really? Yeah, yeah, we'll display it. That was one argument.
Well, I mean, the real problem is if they say, hey, we're going to drop this massive bomb on the ocean, and you're good, because they have to announce it beforehand, so everybody's looking at the ocean, because otherwise, why are you just staring at the ocean? So if they announce it beforehand, and then it actually doesn't go off, the Japanese are just looking at this like, so?
Right.
And they drop a rock into the ocean.
And it's going to make me more resistant to surrendering.
Right. So drop it on the city.
They're going to say these people are stupid. Right, yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not defending that argument because I believe in it, but just to defend their argument, they would just point out, look, they weren't even willing to surrender after the first bomb.
Yeah.
Right? Though they weren't given much time. But, okay, I'll stop. I'll go off on a big, long thing that doesn't help you get ready for the test.
It does help me make the mess.
It just comes naturally.
Yes.
Okay, more questions. This is good. I think we've covered a lot of material that will be on the test, so just keep at it.
When you say difficulties of 20s and 30s, are you talking about the economic situation with the decision to go to war?
Right.
Okay.
The economic situation, and that's connected to the international situation, right? You have this Great Depression, at least to economic problems that will eventually lead to war. Right, and which side is particularly hit hard by these economic problems? Which sector of Japanese society?
Stock market?
Stock market's hit, right. In terms of so I'm looking at types of, farmers, agriculture. Right, those people are particularly hard hit. And this is problematic because you look to the rural countryside is the repository of Japanese identity, and that's where the best soldiers come from. Right, and remember in that video that I showed a long time ago on spiritual mobilization, right, the one guy said, the farmers who grow the rice can't afford to eat it. And then so he wouldn't kill the high official.
Problem solved.
It did solve the problem.
I think that's just very Japanese.
Oh, sorry?
If you have a problem, just go kill it.
Alternatively, commit suicide.
Right? Yep. Well, you don't want to argue with them because that would be impolite. So you kill them. Sorry, that was easy.
To show how strongly you feel about it, though, so you should throw your guts at it.
Exactly. You remember stuff from before the midterm. Excellent. Excellent. So
It's kind of hard to forget that.
I'll grant that. So we're the last step, but let's keep charging away.
Test hell. That sounds.
Okay, what was the test hell reading? Do you recall what that was about?
Like going to college but not really knowing why you want to be there.
Exactly, right? You had these people going to cram school, being forced, you're going to study, and then you study, you get into Tokyo University, and then you say, okay, what am I supposed to do now? And that goes to the whole problem of meaning. right? I'm in college, I'm here, okay, so what?
Is that what you want us to know for the answer? Like, is that would be the answer? So basically, people just, I mean, like,
No, I understand.
you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so basically, people are just studying their hearts out and then getting into college and not understanding why they did so hard.
Right. Well, it's also connected to this issue of meaning.
Okay.
People search for meaning, right? Why are we doing this? What's the point?
How about the declaration of war?
Right? Okay, right. Who's declaring war? Which war are we talking about?
World War II.
World War II,
Japan.
right? Yeah, Japan's declaring war, right? And how's it justifying itself? It's declaring war in the name of Mary?
They believe they're acting in self-defense and for pan-Asianism.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the key thing about that. And that's from Huffman.
Address to young men.
Just young men. Let's see. Oh, he actually gave me the year, 1930, right? That goes into it, right? What does that? Does anyone recall what that document is arguing? Okay, well, it's 1930, so it's right before what event? What happens in 1931 we just talked about?
Sort of Manchuria.
Manchuria, right, exactly. And remember, this guy talks about there's 3 ways that Japan can, its population's expanding, it needs to grow. There's 3 ways it can do that: international trade, immigration, and expansion. International trade, immigration, expansion. Remember, by the way, when you want to remember the list, you remember the thing about, like, this is the IIE, right? IIE, kick him in the knee. Raz, kick him in the other knee. Right, and so then what is what's happened though? Why does Japan choose expansion? Why don't they go with the other 2?
They get cut off from trade,
Mm-hmm.
and it's pretty hard to immigrate.
Well, they get cut off from trade, right? The international societies after the Great Depression are closing their doors and not allowing so much trade. So, right, Mary.
Anti-immigration policies by other countries against the Japanese.
Right. So, for example, the United States basically bans immigration by Japanese into the U.S. So these 2 doors are closed off. So what's key about this document is it's showing a kind of Japanese perspective. Hey, you encircled us, right? It's that ABCD encirclement. You're not letting us immigrate. You're not letting us trade. Okay, what do we have left? We've got to expand. And so then when the League of Nations tells us not to expand, well, why should we listen to the League? They're just the tool, the puppet of these white imperial powers. So who cares?
So the address is just the youth receiving this information?
Yeah.
This is the one course of option left?
Right, he's arguing this to young people. Right, which actually I'm glad you brought that up because that's important too, because this is going to the younger people who are going to be fighting, and it's going to motivate them to go willingly go off to war for the empire. And like I say, it is the war against China and the war against the United States, the popular war, until they start losing. Right, and they just kind of remember the last couple of years, not the first 7. Well, I want to give you just a breather just to think for a second. So I just want to go say something briefly, right? Everyone, you got your paper grades, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did it email you? Did you get an email from Moodle saying your grade has been updated?
Mm-hmm.
I actually got that email after I got your email asking me if you got the email.
Okay, that's the problem. It just takes a while. That's the problem. Okay. Well, just as like grades were very good. Well, grades were weird. Grades were very good. I think the average was about an A-. Right? People just, I have no problem giving, I should say giving a grade, because I'm not gonna curve down, right? If people did well, then that's fine. However, there are several people who haven't turned in that assignment or either assignment. And just a reminder, this is difficult, this is problematic, because if you don't turn in the papers over 25%, right, 100 minus 25, the highest grade you can get is a 75 if you get an A on all the assignments, right? Other than the papers. So, but that's very hard to do. So if you would get normally just an 80% minus 25 would be a 55, would be an F. And just as a reminder for people who have done this, I don't know your situation. If someone has a 55, they will have an F. I won't move it up. I had a student last semester who didn't turn in, was missing assignments. He had a 56. He got an F. You can usually get, in 3 or 4 hours, you can usually beat out a C paper. Usually maybe even less than that. So I would encourage you to go ahead and do that, because I will accept papers up till Tuesday. There'll be a late penalty, but if you haven't done that, please go on ahead, because I would hate for anyone to get that. But I have to go with I have to do what the numbers say. It would be unjust to other students. So, okay, that's our breather.
Professors encouraging us to write papers in 3 to 4 hours.
Well,
I just wanted to paraphrase that.
Thank you for being difficult.
It's on YouTube.
No, what
There's evidence.
What I'm saying is, some points are better than none. And just as a pragmatic thing, to just go ahead and get a few points rather than to get a 0, right? An F is very different from a 0, right? Even getting 50%, it's still, points. Points are good. Because, for example, this individual, if he would have just gotten an F on a couple of assignments that he turned in, he would have passed with a D minus, but D minus is different from F.
Question.
Yes, Emily.
Pertaining to the occupation of Japan, do you want us to talk about the actual, the government that the U.S. had set up and how they were controlling everything, or more of, how Japan felt about it, like the shame versus the gratefulness for the U.S. coming in?
Which part are you
In the
referring to?
concepts, it just says occupation of Japan.
The main thing I want you to understand about the occupation, we hit on a little bit already, was just this fact of the, the fact that sometimes it kind of works and sometimes it doesn't, right? That some reforms, such as women's suffrage, land reform, those are accepted and are popular and they stay. Some, like decentralization of police and education, getting rid of the Zaibatsu, those aren't successful and they go away. The other point related to that is the so-called reverse course, right? Where until about 1947, the United States is emphasizing Japan will be pacifist, Japan will be a liberal democracy, we'll even let communists out of prison, but then after 1947, right, okay, let's put the communists back in prison, and or they don't actually put them in prison, they purge them, they fire them for their jobs, which is still not a fun thing to do, in response to the Cold War, right, and that's referring into the reverse course. And the other big thing just is to know that we worked through the Japanese government, right? We kept the emperor around so that we would have a figurehead to help control the Japanese people, right? Because MacArthur said, if I don't have the emperor, I'll need another 1 million men. That, as far as I can remember, that's basically what I'm looking for. Well, and also, how does the occupation end, right? The occupation ends in 1952. What happened in 1951 that enabled it to end so early, right? We left Japan before we left Germany. Yeah, Emily? I mean, no. Catherine Stein.
Yeah. So is the American occupation of Japan the same as the occupation of Japan?
Yeah, those are the two same things.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, did I have it on there twice?
Yeah.
Okay, darn it. But right, so, and so you have a first round, we're going to make this pacifist liberal democracy, we're going to let the communists even out. And then, okay, Cold War happens, the Americans are frightened, so we need to make Japan into the bulwark of the liberal capitalist, order in East Asia, the anti-communist order, so we're going to build it up, right? And part of that, okay, 1952, the occupation ends. 1951, you have in your readings the security treaty, right? In 1951, you have the peace treaty is signed, and I think 2 hours after the peace treaty, we signed a security alliance. So we go from ending the war to being allies, right? And why did some Japanese people find the security treaty to be problematic?
Because it didn't let them have their own kind of military to go out there and.
Right. That's Yukio's problem, right? We don't have our own kind of military, right? Excellent, Christina.
That was antagonist.
Yeah. If you're on the left, you're afraid that this is going to drag you into another war, right? Japan's interests are not served by the Cold War, right? By having American troops here in Japan, if America gets in a war with North Korea again, gets in a war with China, gets in a war with the Soviet Union, that will necessarily involve Japan. That will get us into a war that is not our war.
Wasn't another problem with them is like it's kind of like another unequal treaty because they couldn't have bases in the U.S.
Yeah. Another.
Pacifist now.
Exactly. No bases in the United States, right? It's not fair. Why do we get bases in Japan and they don't get any bases in our country? And if you're on the right, though, if you're a conservative, why do you support this law, the treaty? Anna?
You can build your economy instead of spending it on the military.
Right. That's good old Yoshida's doctrine, right? He's the prime minister of Japan in the mid-late 50s, and that's his idea. It's like, let the Americans take care of us, and we'll use that money to build up our economy. That's kind of interesting that the conservative there became non-militarist.
Sounds like an American conservative.
Yeah. Blue stockings. Who are the blue stockings?
Feminists.
Right, they're feminists, right? Right, so it's this feminist journal, right, Seito, called Blue Stockings, right? Do you remember the reading from that at all? Yeah, Mary?
Natural genius doesn't pertain to specifically men or specifically women.
Right. That was the reading, exactly. It was really hard, right? I remember that was the one I showed up there. I'm like, what is she talking about? Right, but what she's getting at, she's trying to develop a philosophical basis for feminism and saying that there is no essential man, there is no essential woman. We're kind of alike, we're kind of similar, and so that means that women can have equality because we're not essentially different from each other.
What about the nuclear power? Like, there's so much
Right.
information
Oh, sure.
about nuclear power.
Sure, what was important about nuclear power? Okay, right. So Japan, first of all, we talked about Godzilla, right? And so you had this kind of ambiguous relationship between Japan and nuclear power, right? It said, or I'm sorry, no, Godzilla's not ambiguous at all. It says nuclear power is bad, right? Astro Boy is more ambiguous, right? Because Astro Boy is powered, in a sense, by nuclear power, right? So we have that. But what's also important is the Fukushima reactor, right? And the tsunami 2011, that you have this massive tsunami hit Japan. Japan's electricity, that at the time that the tsunami hit, nuclear power plants provided 30% of Japanese electrical power. The plan was in the next couple decades to make it 50%, right? We don't want to be dependent on foreign oil. What percent of Japanese power is currently supplied? 0. Right. So Japan has a complicated relationship. Japan has lots of bad luck with nuclear power.
I'll say.
Yeah, you have the atomic bombs, and then you get this. So that's the kind of the main thing I'm looking for there.
So I just wanted to say that it's ambiguous, that they have a lot of bad luck.
Well, right, it's ambiguous, but right now it's not very ambiguous.
Right now they're
Right?
very much against it.
Right now it's just like, yeah, this is bad, and probably they're not going to be restored. Especially over the summer. People argued, I think, earlier that, well, in the summertime there'll be such a need for cooling and everything that we'll have to bring them up. They made it over the summer. And so probably there's going to be a lot of opposition to rebuilding them because people aren't going to say a need. They're like, we can get by, we can cut back, and we can go to other sources and we don't need to go to nuclear. So Japan's economy seems to be doing just fine. People seem to be doing just fine without nuclear power.
Is it one of those things like popular opinion, nobody really wants it back?
Right, exactly. And it's hard to make the argument otherwise, because if the economy is doing well and people are still able to enjoy air conditioning, then why would you have it?
Yeah. Things
Very.
What are you looking for in post-war economic growth, like just the last decade and the TV stuff, or?
Well, post-war, right. That's a little earlier. That's the income doubling plan, basically, and just the fact that Japan, because it forms this state relationship between the state and business, is able to grow very rapidly and very quickly, and is able to sustain that growth up until the late 1980s, early 1990s. And we've already covered a lot of that as earlier, so that's just all I would add. Yeah, Evelyn.
Okay, how about the firebombing of Tokyo? Like, what are we?
Great. Okay, well, what was the firebombing of Tokyo? Yeah, Mary?
Most destructive bomb raid ever. 100,000 civilians died.
Right, one night, more than initially died in the atomic bomb blast. The atomic bombs kept killing people afterwards, but the fire bombs did not. Right, and so what's the relationship between that and the atomic bombs? Drew?
There was this, with firebombs especially, but also with nuclear bomb, there was this overall desire to save lives, mainly American lives. Firebombings were a way to try and break Japanese morale and industrial power without risking the lives of U.S. soldiers, because you could just have your planes so far up in the sky that the risk of anti-air bringing them down was relatively minimal.
Right. So just to be a real history geek, I find that they actually flew low level.
Really?
Because of the jet
Firebombs?
streams. No, you're right.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, you're the bigger geek than me.
Yeah, they switched to the firebomb
You're right.
because the jet stream
Right. And
knocked conventional bombs off course.
you're right, I'm sorry, yeah, and firebombs, they're
Doesn't matter.
firebombs, it's
Yeah.
like horseshoes and hand grenades, right? Closely counts the horseshoes, hand grenades, and firebombs.
Yep.
Excellent. So right, that's the military connection, right? It's this effort to kind of deal with it this way. Oh, Mary, you're going to point to another connection? Or?
Both of them involve civilians.
Right, both are involving killing large numbers of civilians. So once you allow firebombing, the atomic bomb isn't a big moral step. Right? You've already had the principle there. It's already acceptable to kill civilians. Right, so it's a desire to save American lives primarily, though sometimes they'll argue Japanese lives as well.
Not sure how many people would argue that with the firebombings, to be honest.
Right. Well, no, but the argument it makes the war end earlier. I'm not saying I accept the argument. That's how the argument would go.
I think the firebombings in Germany are probably more questionable.
Right. Well, yeah, this is also an issue. Hey, Dresden had plate factories. You had to stop the Nazis from having nice decorative plates.
I hear Dresden looked like a pretty nice place once.
That brings us there with the atomic sunshine remark. You're just enjoying your atomic sunshine.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Peace preservation treaty.
Oh, peace preservation law. Right. So do you remember what? Okay. Does anyone remember offhand what year that was?
1925.
Yeah, exactly. 1925, which is the same. What also happens that same year? What other law that we already mentioned in class was passed?
The suffrage.
Yes, exactly. Right. So this is basically this idea. This is constant in Japanese history. Okay, we'll give you some freedom. We'll allow universal manhood suffrage, but we're going to include this peace preservation law, which makes it so that it's illegal for you to criticize the emperor or the holding of private property, and which can get you thrown in jail. If you get thrown in jail, you can't vote or run for office. So we're going to give you a freedom, but we expect you to use it responsibly. So you give with one hand and kind of take away with the other. Right? Meiji Constitution, 1889. Right? It's given out. 1890, Imperial Rescript on Education. Has some freedom, make sure you use it right. Oh, and I'm sorry, I do want to point to one, just this again, this is me being real. It's important when we do history to be careful about years. You'll notice in the identification it says 1946 Constitution. 1946 is the year the Constitution was written and accepted. 1947 is the year it actually started coming into practice. So just so you know, if you get out, it's not going to make a difference for the test, but just so you know, if you get out of this class later on, you see, oh, Japanese Constitution, 1947, what the heck, I was taught 1946. That's why. I gave you the year that it was written. And I said 1946 Constitution to differentiate from the Meiji Constitution.
Okay.
1946 Constitution.
Oh, right, what about it? Excellent, no, that's a good question. I just want to make, okay, so it's under the ID, so what it was, okay, well, when it was, that's very easy. But what period was that was, right? It's 1946, what's going on in 1946 in Japan?
Post-World War II.
Right, right. And who's in charge?
America.
Right, United States is in charge. Right, and again, who writes the Constitution? Americans, right? You remember?
None of them
How-
constitutional lawyers.
Yeah, none really understood that much about Constitution, right? And why is that significant that the Americans would do this? Right, right. We want to get it through right now while we're still in power, while we still have memories of the atomic sunshine, as the one. So Mary goes out and says, you know, they show the Japanese the reps, the drafts, and then they go out while they're reading it, and the guy comes out and says, "We're sorry, it took so long." I said, "Oh, we were just admiring your atomic sunshine just as a B-29 flies over." Right? So that's kind of when it was, right? So why is it important then and there? What does the Constitution do?
Takes away the army for one.
Right, right. Gets rid of the. It says we're going to be a pacifist nation, right? Article 9. Right, which Japan has been trying to get around, and that's also where it comes important now, right? Because it's a major issue of Japan being a normal country. Now, Koizumi can't deploy combatant troops, but he deploys non-combatant troops to help the United States fight in Afghanistan. Right? They did this during the Iraqi War too. Right? So this is why it's kind of significant even today. Again, it connects to Japanese foreign policy and Japanese notions. Are we trying to be a normal nation, right? It's not the post-war for us anymore. What else did it bring besides that? Mary?
Minimum standards of wholesome cultured living.
Right, yeah, exactly, exactly. This is fascinating, right? Something that people complain, it's like, why doesn't our Constitution have this, right? Minimum standards of culture and, what was it again, please?
Wholesome living.
Wholesome living. Right? What happens to the emperor?
Stays.
Right? He stays, but how does he change?
He's the image, or like.
A symbol.
Simple.
Yeah.
Simple. Excellent. No, good, good. He's a symbol of the country, right? He's no longer the state itself. Right? Remember General Nagata, this guy Aizawa killed in 1935? He killed him because he said the emperor was just a part of the state. He wasn't the state itself. The American Constitution goes further, just says the emperor is a symbol. And then you can connect this, even if you want to Michiko. Right? Because that's the popularization of the emperor. The emperor is no longer this kind of god on high. He's out there wooing this woman. Right? The emperor isn't someone you worship. He's someone who you want to marry. Even if you're a commoner. Right? I think we talked about why it's important then and there. It also shows, though, the kind of the relationship the United States and Japan are going to have. It's going to be a big brother, little brother relationship. Right? For many years, and this will later on cause tensions when Japan doesn't want to be treated like a little brother anymore, especially in the 1980s when they start building better cars than us and start outselling us in the car marketplace. Yeah, I think that's enough for the
For the essays, like, how far are you wanting us to go?
You mean, like, how, what was I going, or how,
Like, in terms of, like, the responses, like, how much are you looking?
well, I'm not going to be like
Like-
counting pages.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a succinct, complete answer. One that hits on the major points. Do I have your, I believe I have written down in the original sheet what makes a good essay. May I borrow this for a second, Natasha? Thanks. The best answer will answer the questions in a clear manner with arguments supported by direct appeals to historical facts. So what I'm looking for, thank you, is for you to build an argument and give me historical facts. And I'll be judging it based on how good your argument is. So if you prove your case, even if you don't necessarily mention every single detail, then that would be like an A answer.
Okay.
But the key thing, don't just vomit on the page. Like some people say, I don't remember every fact that's even remotely connected. And it's just like, it's terrible to read, and it's just like, okay, you're just, I know what you're doing. Maybe it should be succinct, it should be clear. And in a sense, I'm going to be looking at, and especially with essays I grade on, what can I say, an informal curve. Usually when you grade essay questions, you don't assign a letter grade at first. You go and read multiple students' essays first. And then what you do is you think, okay, which of these is the best and what characteristics does that have? So in a sense what I'm saying is, follow that, try and be clear and concise using historical facts to make your argument, and just do the best you can. And then you'll be graded in comparison to the others. So don't worry, I'm not going to be like, okay, everyone failed the essay question. As you've seen before, if people miss a question, I had that one student question, everyone but 2 people missed the question. So I threw out the question. That's how I'll be treating these. I mean, I won't throw it out, I'll just grade it.
And the part that you read off of here isn't on the one that you handed out.
Right, I'm going to go fix that. That should be fixed within like 30 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to go to my office and 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
Do that.
Also, this is way longer than that one. Oh, yeah. It is.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The one I just handed out, please. I got the wrong version.
The first one. Okay.
Also, is our test in here?
That's a good question. I was going to talk to the administration about that.
Okay.
I
So
think
sometimes they move it randomly.
when I looked it up, I didn't see anything saying it wasn't in here. I mean,
Okay.
does anyone?
I've had like one class ever that actually moved it.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure.
No one's told me that it's moved. My understanding is,
Okay.
yeah, it's here. That's
Okay.
what I was banking on.
It's fine. Show up whenever the test is. I should probably figure out when the test is.
It's on your syllabus.
Just show up whenever that is. Nobody's in here.
I believe it. Well, actually, I believe it is 6 to. See, it's confusing because I have all my tests on Tuesday.
6 to 9 or 2.
6:30 to 9:30. It won't take 3 hours. I go to bed at 9.
Oh no! What do you think it should?
I usually get up at like 4:30 or 5. But it'll be fun. Kids sleep in. I got to work sometime. Well, I'm certainly happy to answer more questions if people have them, but we are at the limit, so you can leave if you want. You'll still get credit for the day. Anyone who has more questions is welcome to stick around. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
We covered a lot.
Excellent. So I understand these things, I'm hoping that pedagogically this works, that this will help you not only remember for the test, but also in the future, right? And so I don't want to just give you the answers, that's why we try and have this back and forth. And people seem to be pretty prepared. So good luck. If you have questions, please email me, and I will see you Tuesday. Unless you're with another class. And I will post this and send the link.